afternoon, evening. So I'm decided to take the gang mowers for a bit of a trundle today. The one I'm doing at the moment, there's not a lot of grass on it. It was Wessex roller mode when I had the Wessex out. So this is just, I had a few longer areas to do, and this is just tidying up the surface, giving it a little cylinder cut. So there was a few tough old stems that the Wessex had to chew through. So I'm just chopping through them with the cylinders, and hopefully this will take me through till next week, and I'll give it another going over at the end of next week. So usually running them about 8 to 9k normally. It depends how rough the ground is, because the steel wheels on them get a bit of a bounce on if it's too rough, and as it's dry at the moment, any roughness is pretty solid. So anyway, behind me, when I get round this turn, I'll show you behind me. So that is what is going on behind me. As you can see, there's not a lot of grass there at all. I'm just clipping off a little bit. And trying to go in a straight line whilst looking backwards. So this was, of course, Amazoned. You can see there's still plenty of annual meadow grass left. Ideally I'd be going over this again, but it takes so long. So this is what I'm cutting off. I'm not quite getting down to the annual meadow grass. If it wasn't so dry, I would lower the height of cut and take a few of these off, but because it's so dry at the moment, I don't really want to scalp it, get it down too much. So these are the things I'm taking off. I'm just tidying up these old stemmy bits that are left. You can see they've been chewed up by the Wessex. site is just variable all over the place. As we get out into the corner out here, it's hardly ever been used for games. It's not compacted, it grows really well there. So when we normally have rain like we used to, these will be the bits that will be growing faster than anywhere else. Okay, let me introduce you to a Ransomes gang mower. So this was built sometime in the last century. It's a Ransomes 5 gang mower, cylinder mower. It is a Mark 11 with sports cutter 6-bladed cylinders. All this does, you just pull it along with a tractor. Spring-loaded drawbar, which is quite nice, takes out the shock of when you're pulling away or any tough bits. So you got steel knobbly wheels on. You can get pneumatic wheels for them as well, but we're a single site, so we don't need to travel much. We've got a bit of tarmac to jump over, that's about it. So these will give you a little bit of grip in wet conditions. These have been slightly welded. This is one of the ones that I actually puts little knobs of weld on just to build them up again, give it a bit more grip. So the wheel is driven by the ground. This drives some gears in here. There's a big gear, there's an intermediate gear, and another one down that drives the blades. And they are pretty simple, that is pretty much it. So you can adjust the height on the rear roller. E is currently set there. I have been known to go up there for some rugby pitches. These little knobs on here, you can either disengage or engage the cutter. So if you were going a sort of long way along a road or something, you can let those back in, and when the wheels are turning, the blades stay still. Pull them out and they engage. Just like a little clutch gearboxy thing. So these Mark 11 units have a few differences to the Mark 10s. One of them is this height adjusting rod is longer. On the Mark 10s, you're adjusting down here type thing, undoing and doing up nuts. And if you slip, you quite easily hit them. Mine are blunt, so they're not dangerous. But these ones, so these just pivots, the bottom blade will pivot there. And you're basically just pulling that bottom blade up towards the cylinder. The cylinder's static and you just slowly tilt the blade up. And it's just the tiniest of movements. Just loosen it off a bit. Do that up a tiny bit. Do that up again. And now he's too tight. So it just takes the tiniest bit of movement. And it's quite an art. You get used to it after a while. You can whiz around them. These height raising nuts, we used to have all different size bolts on there and all sorts. So now I've got all the bolts the same. All the bolts facing the same way, and I just whiz around with the best tool I've ever bought, which was an impact wrench. Makita battery impact wrench, and just whiz them off, adjust the height, whiz them back on again. So yeah, these cylinders, he's on his last legs. He just gets down to where that, once he starts getting down to where that weld is, he's on his last legs and he won't take much more. But anyway, to save on cost and time, these have not been sharpened for 4 years, which is a bloody long time. So we're running them fairly blunt. So if they were sharpened, and we had sharpened bottom blades and sharpened cylinders, we would be running these so they weren't touching. As they are blunt, we have to run them, they are just kissing each other. It's just a feather light kiss, and they need to be there to cut as cleanly as possible. There's drawbacks to that. One, obviously you're wearing things out, you're wearing the blade out, you're wearing the bottom blade out quicker. You're also taking more fuel and energy to drive them because they are kissing. So this is the blade I put on a year and a bit ago, and see he's got a lot of blade left there, and they last. We don't have a huge amount of mowing for it. It's usually, you know, once a week over the growing season, you know, and that's along with the fact that, you know, we're running them touching rather than not touching. So that's about right. There's a bit of friction there from them kissing. So that's about it really. I mean, it costs very, very little to run because we're not sharpening them, and it does that sort of job. It's fairly neat. And so when I start getting, you know, demo roller mowers in, it's a job to justify the outlay on those, because I've got an artificially low budget on, or expenditure on these, because I don't get them sharpened. If I'd sent them away and got them sharpened every year, they might have been more willing to get a roller mower in instead, which I could do all the maintenance on it myself in-house, and we wouldn't have bills for sharpening that we don't have. If that makes sense. So also another benefit of these is it's quite relaxing. With the roller mower, you're running the tractor at higher revs. You've there was a bit of bouncing, not bouncing, there's a bit of knocking where the rollers were going over such hard ground. That was all coming through the drawbar and into the tractor. So you got higher revs, you're going slightly faster, you got this slight knocking when the ground's hard coming through the tractor. And these are just quite relaxing. Close up all the windows, turn the aircon on, trundle around about 1500 revs, and just driving around like a Sunday afternoon drive in rather pleasant weather. There are various seals on these gearboxes. Some of them are sort of leathery, felty type efforts. I think they might be modernised nowadays, but I've got a mixture of EP 190, 170, oh bloody, I can't remember. Anyway, I got some sort of thick liquid gearbox oil, and that's mixed with general purpose grease to try and get a consistency where it is liquid. It moves around in there, but it doesn't come out the seals like that. So when we're on a hot day and the oil gets thinner, the warmer the day is. So there's a slight leakage from here. I play a sort of balancing game with the grease and the oil, just trying to get the right consistencies, so it's as liquid as possible but doesn't come out the seals, which are elderly seals. Various grease points on here. You've got a grease point on each end of the roller, grease point on each end of the cylinder, the bearing in there, grease point on there, and then grease points on all the frame. You got a couple on these pins, a couple on these spring-loaded mechanisms, and a couple on these frame points there. But apart from that, it's pretty maintenance free. They all have their own characters. Each little unit